Move to the side, please. Oh my god, this is really heavy. There's chaos. It's hot in here. Hey guys, it's your girl Anoosha Syed, your resident illustrator extraordinaire and character designer for animation. You already know all this. Today, we are going to be looking at literally every single art book that I own. Like many animation illustration nerds, I have a bookcase absolutely full of just so many books about art. I've collected quite a few over the past few years, and actually all of my books are currently at my parents' house because there are just so many and I cannot bring them over to my current place in Toronto. And so I've been trying to make this video for a while, but like I just didn't have my books on me, but I'm visiting my parents for a little bit, and so I was like, let's just do it. Let's just do this right now. And so in this video, I'm going to be going over each of the books that I have and just doing a little teeny tiny review of them. Honestly, I recommend every single one of them. I just love them so much. And this is going to be a combination of art education books as well as art appreciation books, if that makes sense. I will say that like even my art education books are not really going to be like a how to draw kind of book. They're mostly intended for more intermediate artists. So if you were looking for basic art books, then unfortunately I won't have them here today. But like I said, I recommend each and every one of these. Yeah, let's go. The first book that I'm showing you today is The Art of Tangled, and this is actually the very first art book that I ever bought. This would have been when the movie came out in 2010, I think, and this is still my all-time favorite art book. Like literally, you can see the edges just crinkling up because of how much I turn them and mess around with them. And so yeah, this book is absolutely gorgeous. It's just really beautifully written, beautifully like just so much gorgeous artwork in it. And I mean, I'm going to be showing a lot of animation like art of books today, but the reason why I love this one especially so is because normally, honestly, I don't really read the text that's in these animation art of books. I just kind of like look at the artwork. But with this one, I actually read all of it because it's so interesting. And so the cool thing about this book is that Tangled was the first 3D princess movie, right? That kind of came right after Princess and the Frog and Winnie the Pooh, I guess. And so the cool thing was that like this was also what I believe is their first 3D film that actually worked in terms of like looks and everything. And so they kind of explain like how they went about that with they really wanted to capture the essence of old school Disney movies and try to figure out, okay, what made those things click and how can we put those elements into our 3D movie? And so in this book, they really talk about how much research went into looking at those old school movies, especially Pinocchio and Snow White, I believe, because they were trying to capture the vibe of like a small, cozy, beautiful European village and just like what are those things that make it feel as homey as possible. And so those are things that you really see, as well as how do we retranslate the very iconic 2D animation Disney princess look into 3D as well, because they do it so perfectly. And so that part is just so fascinating to read and look at. And then the other thing I really like about this book is that Tangled actually, if you guys didn't know, went through so many different iterations before we got the version that we see on screen now. Like I remember reading that at one point, Rapunzel Tangled was supposed to be the story of like Rapunzel turning into a squirrel, and then there were supposed to be kids from New York who get transported into a fairy tale world, very similar to Enchanted actually. And then there was also a version where Flynn Rider was supposed to look very much like Johnny Depp, like, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, and then also a version of Flynn Rider where he looks a lot like Kristoff from Frozen now, like a much bigger guy. And so it's really cool to see all of those what-ifs in this book. And another thing that I absolutely love is Claire Keane's work in this book. So apparently Claire Keane kept a diary and of just trying to figure out what Rapunzel's life had been like in this, living in the tower and everything, and just seeing how much work she put into what her artwork looks like, you know, like what would her walls look like, what would the world of a teenage Rapunzel be. And so her work is absolutely gorgeous, and it really influenced me when I was in high school. And so yeah, this is why Tangled is my favorite art book and why it is number 1. Also, this is not like a numbered list. I don't know why I said that. Like, I love all of these books, but I'm just gonna start off with my favorite one. Anyway, following the Disney princess theme, we are gonna talk about number 2, The Art of Frozen. So it's hard not to compare this one to Tangled, obviously. I actually got this one right when the movie came out for like a birthday present to myself because that movie actually came out on my birthday weekend. But yeah, I really do like this book, but not as much as Tangled. I really enjoyed looking at the environments in the Tangled book, but I feel like the environments are a little bit lackluster, mostly because it's like an icy landscape, so there's not much you can do with that. But the thing that really shines in this book is the character design as well as the costume design above all else. Like the costume design in this book is gorgeous. Really seeing all of like the motifs and all of like the really intricate design work that went into Anna and Elsa's outfits. I believe those were done by Brittany Lee and they're just so gorgeous. Another thing that I really like, similar with the Art of Tangled book, is just seeing the different iterations that this movie could have gone in. Because originally, since the movie was inspired by the book The Snow Queen, Elsa was originally supposed to be the villain, right? So seeing the original designs of evil Elsa just blew my mind. She looks gorgeous, she looks evil, she looks awesome. It actually makes me kind of sad because I really wish we had gotten that version instead. But yeah, seeing those what ifs are always really fun. And so yeah, that is The Art of Frozen. So that's it for the Disney princesses. Move aside, girls. We're gonna talk about Pixar. We are gonna talk about Monsters University. So I really wish I had the original Monsters Inc. book, but sadly I don't. But this one is pretty good. I really, really love the Monsters Inc. franchise, and I'll be honest, Monsters University might be my favorite Pixar movie. Either that or Finding Nemo, though Finding Nemo always makes me cry. But yeah, I really love this movie. And so what I love about this book is the world building. Like, it is just so cool. You know, obviously you are creating an entire world where monsters live in, and just like the attention of detail that they put into it is really fun, especially because you do have an awesome section for character designs and what all of these monsters can look like, and that is really fun to see. But trying to imagine what a world would look like where these monsters exist, especially a university. But in like, if you have aquatic monsters, of course they would have like an underwater like hall where they would study, right? And then trying to make their buildings look monstery by having spikes that look like teeth, and it's so cool, you guys. I really do like this book. I'm a big fan, and most especially I really like Chris Sasaki's artwork in this, as well as I really like Ricky Nierva's work as well. Also, because this is a prequel, it's also really cool seeing them try to translate the artwork from the first movie into like, okay, we have Mike, Sully, and Randall, is that what his name was? Yeah. Sorry, I burped. What would they look like if they were younger, right? I always think that's really cool, and just seeing just the different ways that you could interpret it as well. Moving on. So I actually have 2 more Pixar books. The first one, whoops, almost dropped that. The first one is Pixar, the 25th anniversary. Pixar 25 ans d'animation, or the 25th anniversary book. So basically, when I was in my second year of university, when I was living in Switzerland, as part of a school trip, we went to France. We went to Paris for a convention there, and coincidentally, there was a gallery show celebrating Pixar's 25th anniversary. It was a really cool gallery exhibit. They basically had like all of the original artwork and maquettes and all of this amazing stuff from like the original Pixar movies that they had. I think they had the show in the US as well, but they were touring in France at that moment, and the show was so gorgeous and really inspiring. But in the gift shop, they had this book. So I don't even know if this book is available to buy now, or if there is an English copy. But even though it's in French, it really doesn't matter because there's barely any writing in this. There's like a little bit of a foreword at the beginning, but for the most part, this is just artwork. So there are a couple of pros and cons to this book. The pro is that since it covers all of the Pixar movies, it's great. You basically have like the art of all of these movies just condensed into one thing. So a little bit of everything, which is great. But the con is that it's also just a little bit of everything, which is a shame. So if you really liked one movie and you wanted to see more from it, well, you might as well just get like the art of for that particular movie. The other thing I find kind of weird about this book is that it's not really organized by movie. It's just all kind of jumbled in together, which is a little bit frustrating, but it's also kind of exciting to see like, oh, what are you gonna get next? Yeah, but if you are looking to find out some history about any of these movies or additional information, again, you're better off looking for an actual art of book. But if you just want some pretty pictures of all of your favorite movies in one, then this book might be right for you. Next, I've got a really huge, messy pile here. Okay, so my second Pixar book is The Art of Pixar. Now the thing is, this book is a little deceiving because after I got my 25th anniversary Pixar book, I was like, okay, this was great, but could I get something that has like history in it? Could I get something that's like categorized by movie? And then this book came out, The Art of Pixar, and I was like, okay, great, this is gonna have like everything that the last book had, but better. The problem is, this book is actually the complete color scripts and select art from 25 years of animation. So if you guys don't know what a color script is, it's basically like a storyboard of the full movie, but in like artwork form, like fully colored work. So it is really beautiful to look at. It was just a little bit of a shock to me because I wasn't not expecting that. But still, this is still like a really beautiful book. But if you are looking for something that has character design, prop design, background design, stuff like that, then again, you are out of luck. But if you're really into color scripts and some environment art as well, then this is definitely a gorgeous book. So some pros about this book is that, aside from like the fact that it only shows color scripts, which is like pretty creative. I don't think I've seen another book that only deals with color scripts. I think that's really interesting. Apart from that is that they don't just focus on the major Pixar movies, they also cover all the shorts as well. So if you liked the La Luna short or like that Magician short or the Day and Night one, they have artwork from that too, which is really cool actually. But yeah, that is the Art of Pixar. Moving on. So this is going to be my last Disney Pixar art of book, technically. And this is probably my second favorite book. And this is the Disney Archives Collection Design book. And so this is their archive collections was a collection of 3 books. I think it was design, story, and backgrounds, I think. So this is like an absolutely gorgeous book. So the awesome thing about this book is that this covers literally every movie from, I believe, Snow White all the way to Tangled, which was like the last movie that came out before this book released. And so if it's so hard finding art of books for movies that are like pretty old, they're pretty rare, and otherwise like they're just like they just did not make them. So having a book which basically has all of that artwork is just so special. It's really cool, and I love being able to see that old artwork from movies like Snow White, from Fantasia, from Cinderella, and all of that. And it's really beautiful. So one of the cons is that like this book, it's mostly a coffee table book, like it's only artwork. There's a little bit of a foreword at the beginning, but there's no real history, which is a shame because I would have liked to see some text in it as well. But I also understand because it's already like so freaking big and it's covering like 50 movies. So it makes sense not to have text as well. But otherwise, like it's really well done, and I love this book. This is probably one of my favorites. I would have liked to get like their background book as well. Yeah, this one's a good one. Next, I have 2 more animation books for you, and one of them is in French. So on that same trip, when I went with my class to Paris, we stopped by at like a couple of bookstores, and I ended up getting The Art of My Neighbor Totoro. And I don't know if did I say it weird? And so this is a really good book. It has a little bit of text, but for the most part, it is mostly a art of book. You have gorgeous concept art, a lot of development work for backgrounds, for characters, etc. A little bit of like the storyboards and stuff. And it really is just so beautiful to look at. Totoro is not my favorite movie, but I had never had like a Studio Ghibli art of book before, so I really did want to get this one just to check it out. But it's just so beautiful. Miyazaki's work, man, it's so good. But yeah, this one is, I don't really have much to say about this one. It's just really pretty to look at. Yes, this is My Neighbor Totoro. Similarly, a few years later, I eventually came back to North America, and I ended up getting The Art of Spirited Away in English this time. Spirited Away is probably my favorite Ghibli movie after Kiki. I think it might be a tie. And so looking at the art for this is really cool. Just seeing just like the level of detail. Again, character design, background designs, background art and all of that. A couple of stills from the movie as well, which is kind of cool. But this was definitely a really good book to look at. But again, I don't really have much to say about it. It's really pretty, you guys. It's just really pretty. So that was pretty much most of my art of animation books, and we're gonna lean more towards the illustration side for a quick second. For those of you who know me and my artwork, I am primarily a children's book illustrator, and I'm especially obsessed with mid-century modern art. And so I really want to get more mid-century books, and maybe in the future, because I do want to get more books, and I've kind of been on a hiatus for a little bit of just because in my current Toronto apartment, I just don't have space for books, which is why I stopped buying things. But I do want to get back into it. Don't tell my husband. Speaking of illustration, this was another big favorite of mine, and this is the Art of the Disney Golden Books. If you guys know, like the little golden books are like a series of children's books, I think from Penguin Random House or from Random House, and then they are the ones that have that little bitty on the side. So Disney does like a bunch of golden books with them, and so this was like a full history of books starting from like the 50s all the way up to now. So if you like text, if you like story, this is great because there's definitely a lot of writing in this and a lot of history. So it definitely is really fascinating to read about it. And just about like the history of like how the little golden book started up and everything. I would actually say that this book is mostly text and not that much art, but I think this is definitely a great book for people who like the history and we're curious about learning about the history of the little golden books and everything. But there's definitely some really gorgeous artwork in here, especially ones, I do like looking at the ones from like the older, like the 50s, 60s types books, because they're not really on model. Which I find really funny because like some of them, I really like the Alice in Wonderland one. I love the Cinderella one. They're just really fun to look at, and I really do like how now, even now, like the little golden books, they're trying to stick to that retro look with their newer picture books. It was pretty cool. Yeah, I really do like this one too. Next up, this isn't really like an art of animation book. It's kind of like in between illustration and animation, but this is the lovely Ladies of Animation. There's a pretty funny story about this one. So, well, basically, this is the art of Lorelei Beauvais, Mingzhu Helen Chen, Claire Keane, Lisa Keane, Brittany Lee, and Victoria Yang, who are all, a couple of years ago, I don't know if all of them are still there right now, visual development artists at Disney. And so it's basically a collection of, like each section is dedicated to one of these gorgeous, you know, beautiful, talented ladies and their artwork, and it's just really cool. And this one is a combination of having artwork as well as some text, because I find this kind of similar to having a zine of someone's art, like a little art book that you might get from a convention. I have so many of those too. Maybe I'll make a video of one of that one day. What I find interesting about this is that they also do include text with their illustrations as well, which is kind of cool. Just hearing about the history of like what inspires them, what are their personal projects, etc. And it is really cool. And so the kind of story behind this book is that, again, this was while I was living in Switzerland, and so in a gallery in Paris, they were doing an exhibition for this book, kind of like a gallery, kind of like a book launch or something. And so they were selling this book as well as showing artwork from ladies involved. I really wanted to go, even though it was like a 5-hour drive, and I begged my dad, and me and my dad went on a little road trip, and we went all the way to Paris, and we spent the day there, and we went to the gallery show, and I got my book, They weren't there to sign it or anything, but I got my book, I got to see the artwork in person and everything. And it was just a really nice time with me and my dad, and I'm really happy that he supported me and my love for animation. So that actually really makes me happy to think about, which is why I also like this book. Well, that's pretty much it for my art appreciation books, but I also have a couple of art education ones as well. First up, we have the Drawn to Life Volume 1 and Volume 2. This was one of those books that are always on those lists that people say every animation student has to have one of these books. It's this one, The Illusion of Life, and a couple of others as well. And so this was back when I really wanted to work in animation and as an animator. And so I got these books. I haven't finished them because it's mostly a textbook. It pretty much is a textbook. So it's basically, it is written by Walt Stanchfield, and it's a collection of his essays. And I would argue that this is not really a how to draw book. It doesn't really teach you how to draw art, but it teaches you tools on how to better give life to your artworks and kind of the secrets of animating your work, if that makes sense. It does teach a lot about principles like stretch and squash and line and silhouette, animation principles like overlap, follow through, and drag. So while I won't teach you things about what perspective is and how to do perspective, it'll teach you how to incorporate these things, how to incorporate perspective and gesture and silhouette and stuff into your artwork to make it more lifelike and to make it more appealing. I'm still working my way through it. Maybe I'll try to give it another go. It's just, it definitely feels like a lot of work because it honestly is 2 textbooks worth of material. But from what I have read, I do recommend it for anyone who is trying to bring more life to their artwork and wants to just get the whole animation student experience, I guess. This book, on the other hand, this you definitely should get if you are interested in illustration or just want to improve your color and light skills. This is written by James Gurney, and it is a very comprehensive guide in color and light and how to incorporate those elements into your artwork. Again, this is not really teaching you the basics of the art fundamentals or anything, but it's definitely teaching you techniques and giving you the tools so you can implement it into your own work. And it is really, really fascinating. And it'll cover a lot of different topics of how to work with different sources of light, whether that's if you're working with direct sunlight, indirect sunlight, overcast, window light, street light, and how those different light sources would affect your work. But my favorite thing about the book is just learning about color and how color has a relationship and how do they affect each other and how do they work off of each other. So James Gurney is a traditional painter, and so a lot of the terms he uses, a lot of the examples he uses are for traditional painting, but definitely applicable for digital artists as well. And even though he's also gearing more towards realistic lighting, it's definitely stuff that even if you're not going for realism, it's stuff that you should know, because as I always say, and what every art teacher says, you gotta know the rules before you break them. I've definitely learned a lot in terms of how realistic lighting works so that I can stylize it better. Does that make sense? Anyway, the last book that I have for now, because I'm gonna show you some secret bonus books in a little bit, don't you worry, don't close this video just yet, is a book that I literally just bought a couple of days ago. So I haven't finished the whole thing yet, but honestly, I'll just recommend it to you right now. Go out and get it. And it is the GAG Guide, the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook, Pricing and Ethical Guidelines, the 2021 edition. So I talked about this book already in my pricing video from a couple months back, but basically the Graphic Artists Guild is a collective of artists, and every couple of years they come out with the GAG Guide, this little handbook which basically gives you literally all the information you need to work as an artist. The thing that it's most known for is that towards the end of the book they give you pricing guidelines on how to price your work and what to expect for each industry. So apart from illustration and children's books, which is what my focus is, it covers literally all aspects of illustration and animation as well. It has information on greeting cards, on calendars, on advertising, on motion graphics, social media, banners, editorial, literally everything. It's really, really cool. And so whenever I get asked by a client for, hey, we want you to work on this project, well, what can we pay you for this? No, that's not what they say. They're like, what's your rate? That's what it is. And I'm like, I had no idea, but I can check in this book and it'll tell me what it is. So that's like the thing that it's most famous for. But it also has like a huge section at the beginning, which is just about like the business of illustration. So talking about contracts, talking about taxes, legal stuff, promoting your work, communications, negotiations, just like literally every aspect on the business of illustration. And so I am super, super, super excited to get through this book because it'll help me so much when I am creating my YouTube videos for you guys. So like for this negotiation video, which I keep promising, which I promise will come out soon, there's actually a chapter or section dedicated on negotiation in this book, which is very cool, and I am learning a lot, and that kind of stuff will be implemented into my videos now, which is very exciting. And also, like I mentioned before, this book, they have a new edition that comes out every couple of years. This is the absolute newest one that just came out. You don't have to get the newest one because these are quite expensive. So you could get the 2018 version, you could get like the slightly older than that version. It should mostly be similar. Maybe like the prices get updated a little bit better, new industries are added. But if like the newest book is financially out of your reach at the moment, then there's no harm in getting the 2018 or I think it's the 2015 version. But yeah, so like I said, I'm currently at my parents', so these are all of the books that I have here right now. And I'm actually going back home to my place tomorrow, which is very exciting. I've been away from home for way too long. But I am gonna try my best to carry some of these books back with me. I don't know how many I'm gonna be able to do, but in like 2 seconds, I'm going to show you a couple more books that I have back at my place over there. So yeah, in like 3, 2, 1, and we're back. So yeah, I'm back home. It has been quite a while and I missed my bed so much. And I'm trying to film this as quickly as I can because it's forecasted to rain pretty much all week, and this is like the first time I've seen a little bit of sun, so let's do this quickly, okay? Unfortunately, my luggage was actually pretty heavy, so the only book that I could bring back with me was the Graphic Artist Guild Guide, which I think is the most important one anyway, because that is going to be the book I'm going to use for these videos, and so the rest eventually, hopefully one day, I'll bring back with me. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to talk about the books that I have with me currently in Toronto. And so this is going to be a collection of some art books and mostly informational books. So first up, we have The Art of the Iron Giant. So The Iron Giant is pretty much one of my favorite animated films, or just like films in general of all time. It's really such a gorgeous, gorgeous movie. The cool thing that I found out in this book is that originally The Iron Giant was developed to be a rock and roll musical of sorts, and that's why like you'll see a lot of initial concept art, which is quite different from the actual feel of the final movie. And then eventually Brad Bird was brought on, who I absolutely love his work, and he brought in that 1950s aesthetic. He brought in the concept of the Iron Giant being a gun who does not want to kill. And so there is like a really stark difference between the artwork that was like the carefree development stuff at the beginning versus the stuff at the end. And so just the character designs in this are absolutely gorgeous. I really love all of the work that was put into it, and just like the specific style. I don't know what style you would call this, but the character design is just chef's kiss. I think apart from the character design, it really is just like the whole aesthetic. That's a major selling point of this book. It really leans on like the cyberpunk retrofuturism vibe of like back then, especially in the designs of the robot. They've got like a lot of experimentation going on with different mediums, different styles, and going really all out, which I really, really appreciate. And if you're into that kind of stuff, there is a lot of text, so a lot of reading to be done, a lot of history to learn. And this is actually, I think, one of my more favorite books, partially because this was a gift that my now husband got me after we watched Iron Giant in the cinemas, which was very thoughtful of him. Very nice gift. I almost forgot about this one. So the last Art of book that I'm going to share with you guys is the Art of Steven Universe. This is Steven Universe End of an Era. There are 2 Art of Steven Universe books out there, and this is the second one. I still want to get the first one, but yeah, we'll see eventually. So this book is super, super gorgeous. I'm an absolute huge fan of Steven Universe. I think it's just so incredibly well written. It has broken so many boundaries in the world of like children's television and just television in general. And most importantly, I absolutely love the art style of the show. Character designs are super cute. The color design in the show is just straight up gorgeous. Background designs are super, super lovely. I'm very curious to see the first book because I feel like that would show much more of like the initial development art, because I don't know if you guys remember, but when the show was coming out, the Steven Universe crew had a Tumblr called Steven Crooniverse, which was super cute, and they would post their concept art after every episode came out. And it was really cool to see that initial work, especially the development work. I love the stuff, especially, I'm sorry I keep saying especially by Kevin Dart, who is one of my favorite artists ever. And he did a lot of like the initial design work, which was super, super beautiful. And so we don't really see that in this book because it is like the part 2 of the series, but you do see a lot of character designs, the background designs, color designs, all of that gorgeous stuff. And more so, if you are a Steven Universe fan, you really see the thought process and the behind the scenes of the making of the show. For me, this was more appealing as like a behind the scenes of the writing, I suppose. Just seeing like the what ifs, how we got to the finale and the sequel series and everything. While there is a lot of artwork, this is definitely more of a text book. And for some people, they might prefer looking at the artwork. Maybe book 1 is better suited for that. But for me, this was perfect. I really loved hearing about the behind the scenes of the show. So A+, love it. And yeah, that is the last of my art books. And now we're gonna move on to my how-to books. So these days, I'm kind of leaning more into the idea of working on a graphic novel, perhaps. And so for that, I bought a bunch of graphic novels to study off of, as well as some graphic novel theory educational books. So one of them, which unfortunately I cannot find, but it is Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, which is an absolutely phenomenal book. It was really, really, really interesting to read. I'll just put up some pictures or something, but it's very interesting. It doesn't really teach you how to graphic novel. It's not really like a how-to guide. It's very much theoretical and very eye-opening in terms of like how you interpret comics and just kind of like partially the history of it, but more so just the conceptualization of graphic novels and how we perceive them. Like there was this really interesting section in the graphic novel and Understanding Comics where they talk about how like when you have every frame in a comic, the little white space in between each frame could be understood as the concept of time, because there is like a passage of time going on between them. So for example, if you have like one frame where the character's eyes is open and then the next one, the character's eyes is closed, just when you're reading it, you can automatically infer that, okay, that means that they are blinking. Even though that there's no actual motion, that little white space in between each frame, that is time, that is the passage of time, that is concept of motion. It's really, really fascinating. I'm explaining it horribly. There are all of these little bits and pieces in this book which are truly fascinating to read, and I definitely learned a lot, and I definitely recommend it. I think it really is one of the most famous graphic novel how-to books out there for a reason. And secondly, along that same line, we have Framed Ink by Marcos Matteo Mestri. This book is a more traditional how-to graphic novel book and deals with a lot of things about like the basics of how to draw comics, as well as things like composition, storytelling, framing your pages and whatnot. It really does cover like all of the basics that you need to know about drawing and composition. So yeah, I will say that this is a great book for anyone who wants to get into graphic novels, but apart from that, it is just generally a great guide for anyone getting into the art of visual storytelling, which is what this book is about, essentially. So like whether you're going into animation, even for picture book illustrators, which is my main job, it's really great at understanding like how best to convey a story through artwork. So 10 out of 10, do recommend. Next up, we have Draw Stronger by Creota Wilberg. I absolutely recommend this book for literally everyone watching this. This is basically a comprehensive guide on how to take care of your body as an artist. It's an illustrated guide. It has a bunch of diagrams and instructional images. That's basically the same thing. I'm just listing out synonyms now. Basically explaining why your body hurts the way that it does and how to fix that. So for me personally, I have horrible back issues because I've got like problems with sciatica in the past and whatever. And more lately, I've been having like upper back issues. And I was like, you know what? This is definitely because of my job and because of the fact that I'm working 8 hours a day, 24/7, whatever. So this book really helps me understand, okay, why is it that I'm feeling back pain, and then how can I fix it? It'll show me stretches and how to correct my posture and all of that kind of stuff, and what kind of other outside things I can incorporate, like, you know, a standing desk, a mount for my iPad and a stand, and things like that. Yeah, 100%. I absolutely recommend this book for literally everyone because the crunch mentality is so ingrained in our artist career culture these days of just like, you know, you're not a true professional if you're not working 24/7 and just working yourself to the bone. But the fact is, we only have one body, and if your arm just stops working, if you don't take care of your eyes and whatnot, then you're not going to be able to draw for the rest of your life, bro. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love drawing and I cannot live without it. And I also cannot live without my hands and my eyes and my back and whatnot. So take care of yourself, drink water, and get this book. I got 2 more books left, and these are, I don't know if I would classify them as art books necessarily, but I thought they kind of fit in. So first up, we have The Creative Career Path by Andy J. Pizza, a process for striking the balance between art and money. This is a beautifully illustrated guide. I mean, like, Andy's work is just awesome. And it's kind of like a visual journal diary thing on just trying to process how you want to develop your career and what your goals are and how you want to set about in order to achieve them. When you're starting out, it can be really difficult to try to figure out where exactly you want your career path to go, but like even more so how you are gonna get around to doing that. Like there's just so many different factors that come into play, so many different things to do that you definitely do get overwhelmed, and writing it all down in like this very easy guide is just so helpful. As you can see, I have not written in this book yet, mostly because I just have like a fear of writing in sketchbooks and diaries and just ruining them. So I just read it and kind of mentally wrote down my thoughts. But if you buy this book, you know, don't do what I did and actually, you know, you should write it down. But yeah, it's just straight up a super cute little guide to look deep within your soul and figure out what do I want to do with my life and how do I set about to achieve my goals and also make money, which is also quite important. And lastly, we have I Moved to Los Angeles to Work in Animation by Natalie Nourgat. Natalie is a super cool story artist working at Disney, and I got this book from her while I was at CTN or Lightbox Expo, I cannot remember, but she's really cool. So originally this graphic novel that she made was, I think, available on Gumroad, and then eventually she published it as like a full mini zine graphic novel with a few extra pages, and it basically lays out her story of how she got her dream job in animation and how she made like this huge move going out to LA, just relaying her journey with us and like all of like the hard work that she put in, the bumps along the way, and etc. And it's actually also a pretty helpful guide for anyone who is interested in working in animation in LA. And while obviously everyone's journey is different, it is definitely helpful to just hear another person's perspective and to hear what helped them. But also it was really insightful to hear about that, like, her journey definitely wasn't easy, and it took a while for her to get to her dream job, or just to even like find her first jobs in animation. And as someone who has faced many rejections in the past and has felt so much insecurity over them, it did help. It did help to hear that. So yeah, it's just a beautifully illustrated graphic novel. I would kind of classify this as an art book, but yeah, definitely also worth a buy. And that is it. Pretty much all of the art books that I have on me right now. I definitely want to buy more and more. But like I said, I just don't have the space for them right now, but eventually I will. Just you wait. Potentially, I might make another video going over all of my favorite picture books that I have. But again, that is a video for another day, maybe in like a couple months. Who knows? But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this video. Let me know which of these, if you have them, which are your favorites. And if I missed one that you really like and you think that I should definitely get, please let me know. I will say that there are a couple that I really want to get, which include the Art of the Incredibles, Cartoon Modern, which basically talks about the history of mid-century modern artwork, the They Drew as They Pleased series. I want all of them, please and thank you very much. The Art of Boss Baby, The Art of Luca, and maybe The Art of Moana, and I know I'm missing one. I actually like The Art of Megamind. Megamind's one of my favorite movies. I would really like to see that if they have an art book out there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz, and I'll see you maybe next week. Okay, bye!